All right, everybody, I'm now checking in 7 hours and 44 minutes into poring over the patch notes for the PTR. This is for Season 7. Now, I get it. Why are we even talking about Diablo 4, PoE2, blah, 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 blah. I get it. Hey, fun fact, you can play like more than one video game and care about them both simultaneously. As just a quick update, because I've been getting asked about it a lot, yes, I do plan on playing PoE's Early Access starting on the 6th. Obviously, everybody's like, oh, you're going to be playing the Witch and doing Minions. I probably want to try something other than the Necromancer, but of course I'm also going to be playing the Witch just to get a better flavoring and a better understanding of what every other game out there is doing, right? But I just want to put that out there. Yes, I'm going to be playing the game. Yes, I plan on covering it as well. There are a ton of great PoE like streamers and content creators and guide writers, especially already on Maxroll, who are going to be able to bring you like top-notch, a decade's worth of experience with this game. I think what I more so want to be exploring is just the idea of coming to understand the game, noob-friendly builds, getting through like progression things, getting into the end game and stuff like that, where I can bring a new player perspective and a ton of years in the genre as itself. So look forward to that kind of stuff. I just wanted to touch on that because I've been getting a lot of questions. Now back to Diablo 4, the game that you're probably here for. There was a lot of changes, and those lot of changes have a lot of different mathematical implications, as well as just a bunch of question marks about what we should expect from the changes coming to the Necromancer in particular. And I'm going to be approaching this video the same way that I did my last video. Basically, everybody just wanted to see the brass tacks, what I think are going to be the direct mathematical impacts on the builds that you like already. So I'm going to start with that. Then I'm going to go into how we got there and then touch on some of the broader stroke concepts of what you need to be aware of. Check the timestamps down below. Leave a like on the video if you appreciate that. Also subscribe to the channel if you're brand new and you appreciate that I'm not going to waste a lot of your time. Let's go ahead and jump into it. There are an insane amount of buffs. Again, I'm going to go into them in more detail in the later on timestamps, but just going from left to right here, I'm just going to kind of read it out to you so you get a better understanding of what we're looking at. This number, this row right here, is the total mathematical increase in damage. So Sever is going to be doing 6.27 times the amount of damage that I was doing previously. This is a 627% increase in overall damage. It's like you just put in a glyph that said multiply your damage by over 600%. That's what we're looking at. Right here, the number that chat helped me to be able to show you is the much more accurate representation of how many pit clears this represents if you've been piloting the build and attempting to push. The reason why we're going to use this as a metric is because it's just a really easy way to be able to compare builds. Now, obviously, builds are going to be able to do different things like speed farm better and be better in Hell Tides and Infernal Hordes, etc. That has a lot more to do with the build identity and a lot less with the raw power that the build has gained. To that end, Sever is going to be going up by 627% damage. That is 13 pit tiers. And right now with its highest tier currently out, what it basically means is we'll just be scratching the surface of pit tier 120 on the build, which is a far cry from what it was at the beginning of this previous season. Light in a similar boat has gained a huge amount of additional damage. So 623% damage. This is also roughly equivalent to 13 pit tiers. It's going to be looking at just over pit tier 110, which will put it just about in the top of A tier, just at the bottom of S tier. Infinimist of all the builds here gained a whopping 557% damage. This is also representative of nearly 13 pit tiers. And what this means is that we might just be able to be crossing the threshold over into consistently clearing out pit tier 100. And on top of that, depending on how strong the build actually is, probably moving back over to just like primarily just corpse explosion and making that as efficiently as possible. It could probably get up to somewhere around like 105 with some optimization. Bloodwave is by far the largest total Giga Chad whale gainer out of all of the changes coming in this patch. I'm going to talk a lot about the different things that are applying to it, most notably its new unique pants, which are Kesami's legacy, if I'm not mistaken. But they gained a whopping 14,700 bonus damage. This is a total of 35 pit tiers, and Bloodwave in this next PTR is going to very quickly become one of our only builds that might be able to clear a pit tier 150 on the Necromancer. So just a single season worth of buffs, going from just barely doing 120 on our strongest builds to potentially clearing out 150 is obviously an insane jump there. Bloodwave is what you want to keep your eye on. Soul Rift got a meaningful 400% increased damage here. It's about 10 pit tiers, putting it up around pit tier 122. OP Bone Storm actually got like an insane amount of overall damage bonus. The main issue is that we haven't really built into it yet, because even with the changes that would make it much more viable, it wasn't really gaining a lot. But oddly enough, gaining a pretty insane amount of additional damage here means that this should probably be a fairly competent build for being able to push decently into the pit. We'll have to see it in the PTR. Affliction, a build that was like kind of a thing in the last PTR and then basically got nerfed by association with changes to glyphs, has just gained a way of abusing our character sheet to scale its damage pretty significantly. So I'm definitely going to be testing out in this PTR again, just because it has that potential. We'll have to see exactly where it ends up and if it's viable enough to warrant using it. Bone Spirit, the Golden Boy build, the strongest build that we've had for multiple seasons now running, only gained a pretty massive amount of 149% bonus damage here, but that really only represents maybe 3 pit tiers, putting it firmly at like pit tier 123, which is still going to be our second or third best performing build out of all the ones that we currently have. It'll just not necessarily be the strongest one out there anymore. And in fact, it actually got nerfed fairly hard by something that the majority of builds actually saw a bit of a buff instead of. So we'll be touching on that later on. Spirit Wave. Y'all remember Spirit Wave? For a long time, we thought it was the strongest build. It generally fell into second and then third place. Spirit Wave got nuked into the ground, literally non-functional anymore. I mean, like, you won't be able to play this build because it won't do anything. While it definitely needed to be nerfed because the thing that was empowering it was actually a pretty massive bug with how the actual armor itself worked, I did think it was a fairly cool build, and it would suck if this item just no longer serves a purpose. So hopefully it sees a little bit of love. But yeah, as of right now, unless they change something drastic, this build doesn't exist anymore. Pit tier 0, pretty impressive, honestly, considering it starts at pit tier 1. Shattered Spirit is another build which also got buffed fairly decently, but doesn't really have a spot right now because it hasn't really been tested. It's another thing I'll be testing in the PTR. I think in general, it's just still kind of worse than Bone Spirit, but with the changes coming to basic skills in general, I think that it will continue to gain traction and eventually become something that is competent and meta. Bone Spear. Bone Spear is kind of the dark horse of this list right now because basically they invented Blood Spear, and not only that, but Blood Spear that consumes corpses to be able to multiply your spears. So this build either gained like a decent solid chunk of additional power or is going to be one of the strongest builds that we know. It's really hard to say right now, mostly because Bone Spear doesn't have a good way to overpower. Even on builds that currently force it to overpower, it's very inefficient and only clearing tier 100 with fishing for like perfect bosses to be able to fight as well. So depending on what Blood Spear ends up looking like, we might have a full delineation between Blood Spear and Bone Spear. Until that point, though, the current amount of damage that I can calculate that just the base build itself gained, somewhere around 245%, is another 6 pit tiers, and again, 106, but with a huge asterisk here. Bloodlance gained a massive amount of damage considering it was already one of our top performing builds in the first place. A whopping 497% damage increase here. It's representative of about 11 pit tiers, putting it at pit tier 124 as a fairly conservative estimate at that, which already makes it stronger than what we think Bone Spirit will be able to perform at, which is a pretty crazy thing to say. Bloodlance was pretty low-key one of my favorite builds in this past season. And it was one of the most enjoyable builds to play because there's just kind of like cast Bloodlance and cast Corpse Tendrils, make sure Soul Rift is off of cooldown. And other than that, it kind of piloted itself. I had a lot of fun with this build. Blood Surge in a similar place is gaining a fairly decent amount of damage increase here. So 350% damage bonus. That's about 9 pit tiers if we're being a little bit conservative. And that will bring it up to a whopping pit tier 118, which is fairly respectable for Blood Surge considering it has been probably one of our worst bossing builds in the history of the game. With the introduction of Kuro's Embrace and just continuing to pile on more and more damage onto this thing, it's really gotten up there. Minions. If Bone Spear, I mean Blood Spear, is one of the dark horses of this season, Minions absolutely is as well. Now I'm going to be creating a video just showing how summons, which is a whole new thing that you kind of need to really understand to understand what a minion is in the first place, are going to be working in Diablo 4. That being said, minions as a base build, so like not assuming that anything gets really wonky and broken, are going to be getting about 300% increased damage here. Again, close to 9 pit tiers, which would put it somewhere around pit tier 113. The major issue here being that minions are now going to proc lucky hit chance, which is something that they didn't really do before, and it's hard to say what the impact of that is going to be downstream, as well as all of their damage now basically scaling directly off of the Necromancer, plus their multipliers, means that a lot of things that only worked for things like Ring of Men Down or different effects will now work for their base damage too. Like a great example here is Grasping Veins. Grasping Veins has never given its damage bonus to minions, it's only ever given its damage bonus to the Men Down ring proc. And now they're going to be able to enjoy a 50% damage multiplier that they just didn't have before, whereas you would use the aspect literally just for the crit chance. So bare minimum, just gaining access to a few multis that we didn't have previously is already going to make the build significantly stronger. And the minions damage and lucky hit chance actually scaling off of the Necromancer itself really opens up the door for a lot of potential. It's just hard to say because it's quite literally functionality we've never seen in the game before. Oh, and they also made Army of the Dead potentially one of the strongest skills that you could ever click and watch the explosions go off of. When I say infinity here, I mean like close to one of the biggest base multipliers that exist in the game. But it's kind of impossible to say what it does because, again, it's brand new functionality. I'm definitely going to be trying out an Army of the Dead build. It's something I wanted to hit in this previous season. I just didn't really have time to, if I'm being honest with you. But in this PTR, it's going to be the best time to try it out. Howdy y'all, this is Editor Mac coming in at the end of this video. I intended to have the entirety of my full analysis of the patch notes and the various key factors that went into how I came up with these calculations in this video. And I just got to the end of editing the first part. It's already 11 minutes long, and it looks like I have something close to 40 more minutes of analysis. So rather than include it all into one video, I'm just going to go ahead and end this here so that for people who just wanted to see hey, my favorite build, how much stronger is it going to be, with a little bit of exposition about why, they can already go ahead and watch that. I'm going to be putting out the longer form analysis after this point. I'm also recording this post edit on Thanksgiving, getting ready to leave. So shout out to anybody celebrating. I hope that you have a great time with your family, found family, whoever you end up celebrating with. For everybody else in the world where it's just a Thursday, hey, I hope that you have a great Thursday. But thank you very much for watching this video. I hope that helped to better understand the totality of what all of the changes are if you've already read through the patch notes. If you're brand new here, subscribe to the channel. As always, if you could leave a like and a comment on the video as well, it would help me out a ton. Let me know if you came to some different conclusions, have different ideas, or excited about seeing the full analysis, etc. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching this video. Truly, I'm thankful for all of you to help this community continue to grow. We are just around the corner of 60,000 subscribers, which is an absolutely insane landmark that I honestly never really thought that we were ever going to reach. So again, thank you all so much for watching. I truly hope that it helps, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.